Hold on, family. Hold on, family. But tweet some people, let them know that I gotta be audio. I'm gonna be audio playing this Laura Coach show, and there might be times where I might have to stop it and give a little commentary. Um, right now I'm tweeting some family, inviting them to come on to this broadcast so everybody could listen. You know what I'm saying? I've listened to a few segments of her show before, and she seems to provide pretty good commentary. But I want y'all thoughts on this as well. Let me know what y'all think about her show. So that's one of the reasons why I'm doing this. While I'm doing this video here today. So just give me a few moments. I'm gonna go ahead and tweet some more family to come up in here, so all the ADOS family could come in and listen, so they can lend me their thoughts as to what's really going on. Lend me their thoughts as to what they think about her show. Oh yeah, sister just sent me a little personal message. And she makes a very good point. She says whether the George Floyd case is staged or not, too many George Floyds have died in the past. And she asked the question, why would cops need bulletproof vests if they are never in fear of being shot at? I'm trying to wrap my head around when black people run around how black people became so docile. And if we're not, then I need to see more bloodshed. I agree. The best answer to explain that is post-traumatic slave syndrome, otherwise known as PTSS, a term created by Dr. Joy DeGroy. Much big ups to her, as to explain our psychological condition via the system of so-called white supremacy. And personally, I think that condition needs to be in the DSM books. But if they're run by European American crackers, then, that's highly not going to happen. Man, I'm gonna have to let her know that I'm on live. I'm about to play Dr. Joy's. Oh shoot! I'm about to play Dr. Joy's. I'm about to play not Dr. Joy's. I'm about to play Laura Coates broadcast. Yeah. So without further ado, I'm gonna play Laura Coates broadcast. Laura Coates show. Laura Coates show. This is my actually first time listening to this segment today. Well, I listened to the latter part, and there was something that she said about police reform, I believe. But we're gonna get to that part once we get to that part. But I will be stopping to provide the to provide commentary whenever I feel the need to stop it. All right. No, without further ado, here's Laura Coates broadcast on Sirius XM.
It's time for the Laura Coates Show. The intersection of politics, pop culture, and the law from an unapologetic and downright hilarious expert. Go behind the soundbites for your daily dose of entertainment. The truth! You can't handle the truth! From Capitol Hill to the Hollywood Hills, she's got you covered on all the hottest issues of the day. News from a tweet? What? Forget 140 characters. We got 120 minutes of what matters to you. Always keeping you one step ahead. It's time for the Laura Coates Show. Hey, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Laura Coates Show here on Sirius XM Urban View, where talk empowers and becomes action. I'm so happy to be here with you all today. Today we've got a great show planned for you. We'll be joined by Julian Castro, Zerlina Maxwell, and Anne-Marie Johnson today, talking about a whole host of issues, everywhere from what are the calls legislatively for police reform, including Julian Castro's new plan about people first policing, and also what's going on with the protests. Zerlina Maxwell has a brand new book out that she joins us here to talk about today as well, called The End of White Politics. And then Anne-Marie Johnson will join the show as well today to talk about what sort of advocacy she is engaged in, and how what we're doing and seeing from coast to coast will have an impact on us all as we march towards the general election in November, which is supposed to be a huge year in politics, and yet it seems in many respects humanity is still developing its platform. And police reform, race relations have surpassed the priorities that we saw just a couple months ago in many respects. And so we have a lot to talk about today, a lot to get to. I'm so glad you are here. Can we begin for a second with what happened last night? Now, today is going to be the private funeral of Mr. George Floyd. He will be laid to rest beside his own mother in Houston. His casket will be taken to the cemetery, transported with a...
So he's being buried in Houston, Texas. I didn't know this. Besides his own mother. Oh. Okay. I just had to stop that right there. Because on previous videos I've said how staged this George Floyd situation is. This George Floyd case is. So I've been hearing and reading all types of accounts, been coming across various types of information as to where George Floyd is from, where he lived, during his life, and this, and the third. You know. So I guess that he was born and raised in Houston, Texas, and moved to a couple of other cities and places before finally settling in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and before he was murdered. Well, he was so-called murdered. Okay. That makes sense. It's interesting. Interesting. That's all I'll say about that. Continuing on.
Horse-drawn carriage escorted by the Houston Police Department. It'll be an invitation-only private funeral. We will cover it today on CNN as well. I'll be on CNN beginning at 12 noon today, covering the funeral services. This is one of many that has happened over the course of the past several days, honoring the life of Mr. George Floyd, and really drawing even more attention to not simply the specificity of this horror, but also about the symbolism of what it has meant to the world, frankly, to have witnessed yet another brutal, barbaric incident involving an unarmed person at the hands, frankly, of police officers. And there has been a great cry from all across this country, ranging on a spectrum from abolishing police departments, which is not particularly favored by the overwhelming Democratic majority in Congress or the Senate, ranging all the way to defunding police. Now, of course, that statement alone, that phrase, I keep saying we've got to be very careful about the taglines you choose, because you have to be very cognizant when there is a tagline that is crying out for an explanation, crying out for additional information to understand what is it you mean by this defunding of police. Do you mean abolishing police forces without a substitute or an alternative to actually have somebody respond in the way we want our law enforcement to do so? Or do you mean the reallocation of funding away from perhaps excessively funded aspects of the police department that is not in line with the community priorities, and reallocating it towards quality of life issues that impact communities that have been marginalized, over-policed, and often over-surveilled? Now, you have to figure out the footing when you come and think about this idea of defunding police and what that really, really means and looks like. But I want to start by just talking about briefly what the attorney for one of the officers, Attorney Earl Gray is his name, and yes, just like the tea. And in fact, on his website it says, not your average cup of tea. Yeah, so obviously he's well aware of the Earl Gray tea connection. It's not going to be new to him to make the joke, people, okay? But he is the attorney for Thomas Lane, who is one of the officers who was charged in George Floyd's death. And he made some very startling claims yesterday in order to defend his client, Officer Lane. And he made a appeal not perhaps to your common sense, but instead decrying what the bystander's role was, or frankly what the bystander's role should have been. Here he is last night speaking with CNN's Chris Cuomo about this very issue and saying, hold on a second, my client wasn't the only one at fault, and if it was such a big deal, why didn't the bystanders intervene?
If all these people say, why didn't my client intercede? Well, if the public is there and there's still an uproar about this, they didn't intercede either. And my client's down where he can't really see. Hold on,
Counselor, hold on. There's two things. One, you're laying on a man's legs. You've got a fine view of what's going on with that man. The other officer is literally a foot in front of you on his neck. Two, I understand that he has a senior officer telling him what to do, but there's also a duty to intervene. And if you think an officer is doing something that's dangerous to a civilian, you have a duty to intervene. And he did not intervene. And the idea that the civilians should have rushed in to a policing situation in the inner city of Minneapolis against 4 police officers that have weapons and are kneeling on the neck of a man, don't you think that's asking a little much of civilians and a little too little of your client?
Absolutely. I just brought that up But what you say is that
Yeah, I
he's
know.
put away. Look at the video. He's got his feet. He was holding his feet down. Officer King was next, and then Chauvin.
So you just brought that up. Why now? Did you really think, sir? First of all, let's unpack this for a second, and let me just preface all of this by saying, a defense attorney's job is to defend his or her client. That's the job. It's not to make the prosecution's case easier. It's not to hold up one's client as a sacrificial lamb. It is not to simply agree with the weight against his or her client. The role of a defense attorney is to put forth what? A defense. Now, in the process of putting forth the defense, you want to try to do more good than harm. We already know the weight of public opinion. And why is the court of public opinion even instructive or one to even think about at this point in time, when we know we'll deal with the court of law, and the court of law is what should truly govern and the standard beyond a reasonable doubt? You know why it's important to think about the court of public opinion? Because there has not yet been a jury impaneled. And where do you think the jury pool will be derived from? Yes, you guessed it, the court of public opinion. Right now, there are jurors who are contemplating, oh yeah, I live in Minneapolis, I wonder if I'll be called for it. Now, my role as a juror, obviously, is supposed to follow the instructions as presented to me. I'm not supposed to bring in my biases. I'm supposed to decide based on the presentation of the evidence in front of me. And by the way, that means if there are things that I'm seeing right now that cannot ultimately be admissible in a court of law for whatever reason, just because I heard about it before the courtroom, if it wasn't presented to me in front of me by the prosecutor as he or she was making their case, hoping to prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt, element by element, I'm not supposed to be able to bring any of that in. It's only supposed to be what's in front of me. There's supposed to be a sort of a selective amnesia in order to give somebody the due process and objectivity that our jury pool is supposed to provide.
Selective amnesia.
Does it mean they were supposed to come in as robotic?
Yeah. I just had to stop that for a little bit. Selective amnesia. You know, that's how the powers that be program these mediums that us as the masses watch and hear every single day, to give us that selective amnesia, to provide us that selective amnesia. So we're made to forget stuff that may have happened maybe like a month ago. You know what I'm saying? While what happened a month ago leads to what is happening this month, at this present time, and what's going to happen in the future if things don't change. I call that forecasting. You know what I'm saying? But if you have any type of amnesia, you're not going to pay attention to the forecasting that is taking place, that has already taken place, as well as what is taking place presently and what it may take place in the future. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah. I would just want to throw that point out there before we continue on. Let's continue.
Figures never having understood or related or at any way commiserated or been compassionate. No. You're supposed to be judged by a jury of your peers, and peers are not robots. The reason we have that philosophy is because we want people to bring in their common sense, their experience, the diversity of thought into their consideration about whether they have met the burden of proof. But But the court of public opinion right now is still being formed, and it's out there. And when you're a defense attorney, you should not do things that makes your client be cast in even a more negative light. And certainly saying that members of the public, that bystanders, if you were so concerned, why didn't you intervene? Well, let me give you 4 reasons, each of which is loaded with bullets. A gun in the holster of each and every officer on that scene. Mace in the holster of each and every officer you saw. Likely a baton in the holsters of each and every officer you saw. Appealing to the humanity of each officer was what theoretically they could have asked for, and they did ask for. They witnessed what was happening, and they tried to get the officers to change the conduct of one of the officers, the one who was so blatantly and dismissively kneeling on the neck of a man who told you repeatedly he could not breathe until his body was no longer responsive. And still, minutes went by. In fact, he was unresponsive, they say, for almost 3 minutes of the 8+ minutes, the nearly 9 minutes that he was lying there. And so for the very reason that we don't think it's appropriate to have the average citizen intervene and usurp the authority of a police officer, I'm talking about citizens' arrests laws all across this country, the reaction visceral for at least one reason, and there are many, about what happened to Mr. Ahmaud Arbery, about having a citizen try to usurp the role of a police officer. There's a reason why you don't see an officer who is speeding down a highway after somebody who is speeding down the highway, trying to exact a traffic stop. There's a reason that we don't all as bystanders jump in and say, yeah, I saw him speeding too. Matter of fact, you know what, let me cut him off at the road really quick. Let me put my car perpendicular to his route. That way I can establish a police perimeter. So I saw once in a movie that they put nails down on a highway to try to stop someone from a high-speed chase. And this isn't necessarily a white Ford Bronco, but let me weigh in anyway. Not going to happen. Nor do you want it as officers to happen. For the same reason that you don't want people to intervene and help an officer tackle someone to the ground. Or for an officer to stop an armed robbery in progress. I mean, for a citizen, an average person to do so. There's all sorts of instances when you would never, let alone want, never expect somebody to intervene. And so what you can do in the face of what you're already seeing as officers who are dismissive of a human life, you're now saying that these civilians, these bystanders should have done more. You're the one with your hands on his legs. The other officers, I understand it, at least in part, were threatening to use mace on people, or their presence of force was enough to deter any intervention. So it's not a good argument to make. And I'm not in the habit of making defense arguments for them. But as a prosecutor, I have to always anticipate what arguments they might raise in order to understand how I can address it in my case in chief. Case in chief meaning the part of my case when I'm the one presenting the evidence and having to meet my burden of proof before the defense, if they choose to, presents a case. And if I don't make my burden in my case in chief, and the defense chooses not to put on a case, it's over. If I haven't met my burden, it's over. If I've missed some legal requirement and the judge picks up on it and they make a motion to dismiss because, oh, you know what? Hey, your job here was to present a case about statutory rape, and you never gave any evidence about the age of the people involved. Therefore, you didn't build your case. As a matter of law, this fails. It's your only charge. My case in chief. But you know one argument I could anticipate for accomplice liability, which is what the other officers, aside from Chauvin, are being charged with. They didn't do enough, let alone anything. They didn't do enough to stop their colleague from engaging in this inhumane, murderous act, as is alleged by the state of Minnesota. And normally accomplice liability means you got to do something proactively to get out of it. Like you can't just say, hey, you know what? Hey guys, I got an idea. I know we all planned this armed robbery. I know we did. But listen, here's the thing. Get some pizza instead. You gotta get some snacks. The old Casey Affleck in Good Will Hunting. We got snacks now. It was one of my favorite lines in that movie. I know the whole thing about how you like them apples, or I got a girl I gotta go see about. I got all that thing. Got it. One of my favorite lines by Casey Affleck in the movie, he said, we got snacks now. Where we going? We got snacks now. Which is usually me in the car when people have an idea, or when you're in college and your friends want to go somewhere. And I'm like, well, we got snacks already. Like we're all here. Where are we going to the fun? We're having fun. We're here. We got snacks now. A suggestion like that of, hey, I know we planned this armed robbery or we're engaged in some sort of criminal behavior, but let's go to the movies instead. Or you know what? Maybe we should stop. It's not enough if you keep riding in the car if you know it's going forward. Maybe we shouldn't shoot the person in the room. Not enough for you to have these suggestions. That's normally what it takes an accomplice liability for you to do more than that, to be proactive about stopping whatever's happening. However, even given that, there are some things that the jury will consider, assuming this goes to trial for these officers. For example, the relative level of experience of the officers compared to the training officer, Officer Chauvin. What statements were made by the officers who were surrounding about the health and well-being of Mr. George Floyd? Ironically enough, although Earl Grey, Lane's attorney, is arguing about what the bystanders should do, apparently Officer Lane was the one to perform CPR in the ambulance.
Wait a minute, somebody performed CPR in the ambulance? Oh, so somebody did perform CPR at all? This is what Laura Coates is saying. And I'm just replaying her segment. Wow. Boy, I tell you, there's new stuff coming up every day. And we're going to continue hearing something new. Oh, they ain't going to let this thing go until these officers are guilty. These so-called rent-a-cops. That's what the hell they are. Exactly, Amir. Thank you. He should have been out on the street getting CPR. That's how I always understood it as. And like I said, I may not be astute on medical procedures, but it would make sense that you would leave the person out there on the street while you perform CPR on them. And then you got to have those little tags, those number tags, for evidence. And you have to have the area taped off. I don't care how many blocks it is. You know what I'm saying? Until everything is being done. And it had to be detectives and all that going on. And people got to take pictures and all that stuff. So it wasn't even a crime scene. That was a damn Hollywood script. A damn Hollywood movie that they were performing. And not even to mention the trick cameras that I showed in the previous videos. By this guy named Rambo on Twitter. Yeah. All the stories that they come up with. It sounds cute. It sounds very believable, to be honest with you. But but those of us who are very aware as to what's going on know it's not true. So yeah, I'm going to continue on and let us speak. I should skip and have Zerlina Maxwell speak, see what she got to say. But I'm gonna give it a little time. I'm gonna give it a little time. I'm gonna let her. I'm gonna let her continue on, though.
According to reporting, which everything, of course, but according to reporting, Officer Lane was the one who asked, "Should we flip him over? Should we turn him over? Are you sure he's not experiencing sort of delirium right now? Are you sure?" And was silent.
Wait a minute. All this narrative, but when we look at the videotape, there was none of that going on. That's how I know all this. That's how I know all this stuff is made up. This is nothing than a scripted Hollywood tale of all these stories interwoven and what they perceive as what happened on the scene. This is what Laura Coates is getting, not knowing that what she's presenting is false. You know what I'm saying? Interesting. Very, very interesting.
Each time. So if you are the defense attorney, say, of this particular person, do you go with the, well, bystanders, if it was all that bad, you all should have done more, or do you go with, well, you know what, he may have been liable for what the other officer did, but God, there were some mitigating factors to consider here. If you're going to try to convict him based on what he didn't do, just let's look at what he did do as a mitigation before you throw the book at him. Is he a true accomplice as the others are? And you're going to see much more distancing between the different co-defendants, which is quite typical. You're going to see the distancing because no one wants to be the persona non grata. Nobody wants to be the person who says, well, you know what, if it were me, I would have done the same thing. Not when you see the revolution that has transpired since that. Just makes sense that people would...
Oh, the revolution! The revolution that's transpired. So, is it really a revolution, though? Because real revolution, when that takes place, will be based on something that is actually happening. Based on a cause that is actually real, such as fighting for reparations for ADOS. That may see people like Laura Coates and others who do this media thing, they may not see that as a revolution. But in the back of their minds, they know it is a revolution because it's catching on to Twitter. See, they got Twitter pages too. They got Twitter timelines too that they go through. And they see what the American descendants of slavery are tweeting. And some of them have even taken the liberty to quote ADOS talking points without even referencing ADOS. You know what I'm saying? Without even referencing them as the reason, as the where they get their information from. But, you know, let them keep talking their talking points. It's just making the cause for reparations that much more plausible.
Take a 10-foot pole in this case, but it happens in all cases involving co-defendants. You better believe each of them has their own lawyer. Guess what happens next? Everyone begins to distance themselves from what's happening. So expect more from the other officers who are going to be in court, I believe, the June 29th, which is also the next date of Officer Chauvin. We'll get a preview of what their defense will be, and you better believe those other attorneys are watching Earl Gray, the attorney for Officer Lane, former Officer Lane, making any statements about what the bystanders were supposed to do. The bystanders did exponentially more than the officers did.
Whoa, wait a minute.
And unlike the officers,
Did she say the bystanders did much more than the officers? All they did was stand there and say, "What, you hurting him, bro? He's already down, bro." Oh man. You know, it just never ceased to amaze me. It just never ceased to amaze me as to how these people spin these stories. I tell you, it's just never short of amazing. Man, wow. So much sensationalism. Even on Sirius XM, where it's supposed to be so-called independent media. Oh yeah, these people really speak their minds, and some of them actually be cussing. They cuss a lot more on Sirius XM than you will ever see on national television. More than you will ever see on CNN and MSNBC. I tell you. This stuff is nothing short of amazing. But I'm going to continue on, though.
in Minneapolis, and frankly officers across this country who have similar provisions inside of their police manuals, the police officers have an actual duty to intervene. Those police officers, even though chokeholds were permissible even to, as our guest last week described, the point of being unconscious or rendering someone unconscious, that's only available if the person's actively resisting arrest. There's a duty to intervene. There's no affirmative duty, humanity aside, to try to save someone's life if you're not a police officer. If you watch a building burning, guess what? You don't have to do. If you're a fireman, or firefighter, excuse me, is the phrase that we have to use. My daughter reminded me the other day. It was pure laziness on my part to say fireman as opposed to firefighter. You're right, my sweetheart. You're right. They're firefighters. You're right. If a firefighter is on the street with their fire engine and they see a fire in a house in their jurisdiction, could they be like, you know what? That's a hell of a blaze. I'm not going in there. I'm not even going to start. I see smoke. I'm not going in there.
I don't think the recording is complete, though.
They're supposed to go. But a bystander who says, I better wait for the authorities, I shouldn't go in there, well, would you be more understanding of the bystander or the one who has a duty to fight fires? Exactly. And finally, an argument that will be made is about the training. Officer Chauvin, 19-year veteran. At least two of the other officers, rookies. One saying, I only had 4 days on the job. Okay, well, 4 days on the job immediately brings to mind, I'm sure for all of you, Ethan Hawke, Denzel Washington, training day. You're immediately thinking, oh wait, this is really the 4th day on the job? I can't even recall how many days Ethan Hawke's character was supposed to be in on. I think it was the first day or something with Denzel's character. But these officers, first of all, were human beings for a lot longer than they were police officers. And the bystanders were not police officers, and yet they had an inclination that humanity should be the rule.
Actually, if they really had any humanity, they should have went up there and beat the officer's ass. Because that's some bullshit. How you gonna stand up there and record another man getting his ass whooped, getting choked, getting kneed to the fucking ground? That's just insanity. That's what I'm saying. The people gotta start rising up, man. They killing us. And after they kill all of us black people, what you think they're going to do to you Caucasian folks? You know what I'm saying? Y'all going to be the next in line. And by the time we're all dead, it's going to be too late for y'all any damn way. So don't think y'all fucking exempt for this shit. Matter of fact, I bet that's a whole lot of y'all that are being kneed and choked by the police as well. But see, the media is not covering that. You know what I mean? And there's a reason why they're not covering that. They want to traumatize us with post-traumatic slave syndrome. That's what it is. That's exactly what it is. Because they know because they know most of us black Americans are broken people. And the media and all these other institutions are taking advantage of that. They know that and taking advantage of it. That's why they doing what they do. But as black Americans, we got to break this matrix. We got to know whose we are. We got to know not only who we are, but whose we are. You know what I'm saying? So continuing on.
But even if you think to yourself, well, they're so new on the job, only 4 days, it's not actually 4 days. They were hired in 2019, I believe. And then they had a probationary period. And then they were officially made cops after that. It's my understanding. It's not just 4 days in, it's a period of time that transpires before they're actually active duty on the force, etc. And yet still, I guarantee, and I've had conversations with people about this very notion, I guarantee you will have people who will see what happened, have one point of view towards Officer Chauvin as the chief defendant, and will have a different level of concern and animosity towards the other 3 officers. And it will follow a tale as old as time, the old following orders discussion. Following orders. It'll all be a part of it. And this has been studied, the Milgram experiment, we've talked about it. That there is an unexpectedly high proportion of subjects who would fully obey instructions, even if they're doing it reluctantly. We know full well that there are studies about obedience in psychology, and that they are likely to follow orders by a perceived authoritative figure.
Nope, I have to emphasize what she said, perceived authoritative figure. Perceived authoritative figure. Like the way she put that term together. Yes, that's exactly what the police are. Perceived authoritative figures. But again, those of us who know what's going on, we don't perceive the police as true authoritative figures. So that's what I like to emphasize. Hopefully more ADOS will be coming in to listen. Just retweet it. Then I'm on live so everybody could come in. But yeah, I'm going to continue playing this segment. And I definitely will continue to give commentary. Yeah, this video is most likely gonna be long anyway, so just bear with me.
That will be part of the defense and part of what they will try to appeal to of your human compassion. And frankly, it's not anything new that this would be raised or that a juror would consider it. Remember that Milgram experiment and the perils of disobedience. It's an extraordinarily famous study. It was first described in 1963, later in great detail in 1974. They began, if you recall, the experiments began in 1961 in the basement at Yale University, 3 months after the start of the trial of German Nazi war criminal Adolf Eichmann in Jerusalem. And I remember it was answering the question, the psychological study that the question was posed was, could it be that Eichmann and his million accomplices in the Holocaust were just following orders? Could we call them all accomplices? And this experiment has been repeated many times around the globe and has had pretty consistent results. This will all be part of the discussion and what we'll have to consider as jurors in the court of public opinion and if you are a juror in the actual courtroom. But notice in the long list of things to point out, do you think blaming the bystanders for not intervening was the right course of action? Don't answer it. It was rhetorical. We'll be right back after a quick break. You're listening to the Laura Coach Show here on Sirius XM Urban View, where talk empowers and becomes action. We'll be joined by Zerlina Maxwell as well shortly, co-host, by the way, of Signal Boost weekdays, 7 to 9 a.m. Eastern on the Progress Channel here on Sirius XM Channel 127. We'll be right back to discuss her new book, The End of White Politics, How to Heal Our Liberal Divide. What a poignant and timely book today. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Jeff Lewis from Jeff Lewis Live on Radio Andy. If you're like me, you might be looking for great things to listen to while you're at home. Whether you're working, exercising, looking for a distraction, or just want to relax.
But I want to play for you what Tucker Carlson had to say last night. It's very, very telling about what his views are as they are spoken to a huge audience, telling the world the protests, I don't care if Mitt Romney was there, or there's a Black Lives Matter plaza, or there are very specific calls about systemic racism. Tucker Carlson wants you to know these protests are definitely not about Black lives. And he's trying to appeal to those who feel shamed by what's happening and saying, no, dig your heels in. Dig your heels in. This is not about Black lives at all.
Shadow of a doubt is central to the life prospects of children. They try to make black neighborhoods as safe as their own neighborhoods. They would close the payday lenders that add so much misery to the lives of poor people of all colors. But they don't even consider doing any of this. They don't even try. Instead, they encourage theft and mayhem as if that will help. It will not help. This may be a lot of things, this moment we're living through, but it is definitely not about Black lives. And remember that when they come for you, and at this rate they will. Anyone who's ever been subjected to the rage of the mob knows the feeling. It's like being swarmed by hornets. You cannot think clearly. And the temptation is to panic. But you can't panic. You've got to keep your head and tell the truth. Tell the truth. If you show weakness of any kind, they will crush you. Ask Drew Brees. By some accounts, poor Drew Brees is on his 4th apology for the crime of defending the American flag. He decided to apologize, and now they're using him as a propaganda work in hostage tape after hostage tape. At a moment like this, there is no advantage in cowardice, in being Mitt Romney. You think you're saving yourself, you're just empowering the worst people who hate you. Before you know it, you're confessing to crimes you didn't commit. Don't start. Tell the truth, and the truth is, this is a good country.
I encourage you to listen to the entire...
Wow. Tucker Carlson said, this is a good country. Everything Almost everything Tucker Carlson says is so ironic. But you know, he gets paid to spit his propaganda on Fox News Network. So even though Fox News may, in my personal opinion, does give more accurate news than CNN and MSNBC combined, they still have their propaganda machine as well. So I'm definitely not going to excuse them. Continuing on.
Monologue, if you can stomach it as long as possible, to really understand what is being said and what are the counter arguments. You may find yourself saying, this seems like a very big no-brainer, that we should make sure that systemic bias is not synonymous with policing. We should all, including officers, should have a collective goal of ensuring that law enforcement is performed in a way that aligns with our vision of what we want out of public service and peace officers. When people say the three words Black Lives Matter, that it should not evoke a visceral reaction that makes you feel as though my own life does not matter. That it should be a benign yet powerful statement. But when you hear Tucker Carlson's framing of it, it does provide insight into why this particular issue is becoming even more increasingly a wedge issue. Why it will have to be discussed and should be discussed, particularly marching into the general election. And how we can understand in a stronger, more comprehensive way what people along the political spectrum and those who are, dare I say, undecided or have leanings and ways that blows as the wind, what it is they're thinking. Because one thing we learned from 2016 and prior election years at that has been we cannot assume alliances, allegiances, or votes. But what we need to do is continue to educate. And there is this really great book right now that goes to the heart of what the knowledge that we should be learning over the past few elections, what it can tell us, what past can be prologue, what can we glean from it, and how do we move forward. It's written by a phenomenal woman who's also the co-host of Signal Boost, weekdays 7 to 9 a.m. Eastern on Sirius XM Progress Channel 127. Selena Maxwell is also an MSNBC political analyst, commentator, speaker, and writer, and she's got a brand new book out called The End of White Politics, How to Heal Our Liberal Divide. And, her background is so poised for this moment. She worked on 2 presidential campaigns for Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton. She gained first-hand knowledge while doing both of those campaigns of everything liberals have been doing right over the past few elections and also everything they are still doing wrong. And ultimately, she talks about in the book how these errors worked in President Donald Trump's favor in 2016. He effectively ran a campaign on white identity politics, and he successfully tapped into white male angst and resistance. And in 2020 now, after the Democratic Party has had its most historically diverse pool of presidential candidates finally dwindled down to Joe Biden, once again, as she talks about in the book, an older white man, Selena Maxwell has posed the ultimate question for everyone out there. What now, liberals? She joins us now. Selena Maxwell, how are you? Nice to see you or hear from you. Congrats on this great book. What a great book.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And good morning. Thank you for having me. It's so exciting. I don't go on Urban View enough. Nearly enough.
Well, I'm glad that you're here.
One number up on the dial. And, I'm so happy to speak with your audience this morning.
I am too, and I'm glad that you're here, and I'm glad that this book, it's funny, it always seems that sometimes a book comes out and you think to yourself, well, I wonder when they wrote back, it's not timely. And then you go, wait a second, how much more timely can this book be? And this book has your trademark wit, your candor in it. Tell me a little bit about what made you want to write this book, The End of White Politics, How to Heal Our Liberal Divide.
I started the book out at in a scene at Politicon, which is an annual conference of sort of political insiders, people who are obsessed with politics, people who are really engaged at all levels. Celebrities, you'll have a room where, there will be Ann Coulter and Dennis Rodman in the same room, and you're like, why is this happening? So that's Politicon. So I start the book out there because, the spark for this book came in a moment where I was literally being heckled, booed, hissed at, yelled at by predominantly white male Bernie supporters when I tried to interject and make the point that the future of the Democratic Party is black and brown. And our base is black and brown. And so, number one, making sure we're confronting our blind spots as a party, and, individual candidates are doing the work, to be anti-racist and inform their policies through a lens of intersectionality, as opposed to thinking everything is about class, which is, what I feel is still a valid critique of Bernie Sanders, although he improved between 2016 and 2020, being able to understand that race is something that impacts everything. It doesn't. You can't just be like, well, that's a class. Acted by that. And so I start there in a moment where I felt like the party was fracturing, along this idea that, we can fight against Wall Street and somehow forget that racism impacts poor black people and rich black people in similar ways, frankly, and specifically in this moment as we talk about policing. That's something that my dad has dealt with, and people of all classes have dealt with that, because it happens because we are black, not because of how much money we have in the bank. And I just think that the future of our party needs to come from an understanding that by the year 2045, according to Pew Research and census data, the American electorate will be minority white. That means white voters will be a minority of the American electorate. And in states like California and Texas, this is already true. So why is it, one, that we frame all of our conversations in politics, on television, in media, in all of the online and media outlets around white working class men? Why is that the group that we're obsessed with at all times? And why are white voters afforded nuance? When we're watching on election night and they're going through the analysis and they're like, white working class voters, white voters without a college degree, white voters, white women who are single, white women who are married, and then we get black vote, Latino vote, and then they just move on. Like, wait, I'm not. Where is my slide? And so, essentially, what I'm saying in the end of white politics is, the end of white politics is a statement of aspiration. I would really like to get to a place where the Democratic Party, and that's really who I'm speaking to in this book, but it is broader, and a lot of good information is in there about white privilege, particularly helpful in this moment, I think. But I'm speaking to the Democratic Party about the fact that Republicans have internalized this data. They understand that the white voters are increasingly becoming a minority of voters, and that's why they are so aggressive in their voter support. We are understanding that our base is not white, that we can then inform what we message, how we message, what investments we're making into organizing in those communities, in order to win elections, which ultimately is how we accrue political power. Because again, that's what all of this is about. We need to consolidate the power that we are going to have in numbers. And I think,
personally, I think most Caucasians fear the rise of immigrants taking over this country. You know what I'm saying? More so than us native black Americans. You know what I'm saying? That's the bigger fear. You know what I'm saying? It's not even about voting. because voting is a scam. And once you understand voting is a scam, and once you realize that voting is a scam, then it'll be easier for all of us to act accordingly. And govern ourselves accordingly. Because what really rules the world is money. And whoever has the money has the power. Once you understand that, then voting don't mean shit. Your vote don't mean shit in America. You know what I'm saying? So I agree with people who say that they refuse to vote. What's the use of them even voting? You know what I mean? I mean, shoot, some of your local politicians are pawns, puppets, and robots as well. You know what I mean? I mean, just because somebody looks like you doesn't mean they're going to operate in your interests. And the majority of the time, they're not going to operate in your interests. You know what I mean? So, but it is what it is, though. But emphasizing this default that people need to come out and vote, that's just nonsense to me. You know what I'm saying? Especially when voting for the president. This is the only country that does not directly vote for its president or its prime minister and what have you. This is the only country that does not do that. Why? Because they don't want the people to decide who the president is. The elites get to decide who the president is based on the electors that they hand chosen through a hat trick to lead the country, to decide which president they want to lead the country. Exactly, Amira. Yup. So they notice that these blue check Negroes always go back to voting. You're going to hear this over and over and over again. But the thing is, it's not going to stick this time because those of us, Native Black Americans who understand, who have been living this ADOS life for however years we have been living, we understand that voting is a scam. A lot of these Caucasians, aka European Americans, a lot of them still don't get it. But they threatened by the fact that their voting base is dwindling each year, every year that they have been in existence since the 1970s. And you could blame the Caucasian elites for that. When they introduce globalization, when they reduce healthcare to profit making rather than taking care of your patients. You know? So yeah. These blue checks need to wake up. But it's funny how they use ADOS talking points though. It's funny how they use that. They use some of the same graphs ADOS, Tony and Yvette been using as well. But yet, they never give ADOS credit for the information that they're presenting to all of us on Twitter. It's interesting how that works. But it is what it is.
The party as a whole needs to do a better job of understanding where we're headed. And so that's the statement essentially. The end of white politics is sometimes people are like, whoa, what do you mean? And I think that what we're failing to understand is that because we have white, the identity of being white in the United States as a default, it's the default identity. Everything, even the conversation we're having this week about the diversity in different industries, including media, being important, the default identity is not white. And so when we're doing that, we're just limiting our ability to see other experiences, to understand how policies are impacting those communities, and to make better policy. That is the future. The future looks like the squad, and Democrats need to get that through their heads sooner rather than later.
I'm talking to Zelina Maxwell, who her new book is called The End of White Politics, How to Heal Our Liberal Divide, and she's speaking about what she perceives as this Democratic blind spot that she writes so eloquently about and comprehensively in this book about the preoccupation with catering to the white male working class at the expense not only of the of presidential candidates, but also what could be its most lethal shortfall of the Democratic Party, particularly at a time when demographics are changing and there has been not a concerted effort to ensure that there is nuance in the different voters who will comprise and have comprised Democratic Party. You write about this idea of hashtag activism as well as part of the millennial generation, and you write about how people often mistake that for substantive advocacy, or that they are mistaking it in many ways as some replacement for trying to not only afford the nuance to voters, but also to ensure that they are understanding what needs to be done on a platform level to accommodate the interests that are laid out in hashtag activism. When you see what's happening right now and the platform of the Democratic Party shifting from prior to COVID to now post Ahmaud Arbery and in the midst of George Floyd, what do you see the role of sort of hashtag activism being when the Democratic Party is trying to recognize that blind spot and account for it?
I mean, it's an interesting question for two reasons. The first I'll sort of tackle just in the practical sense. I mean, my first reaction is it's working, right? I mean, I think all the people that sort of decried hashtag activism as not real activism or said it was blacktivism, they didn't understand what was happening or how Twitter and other social platforms are used as a tool to connect people, to organize, to build movements, to build those relationships, so that then there can be collective action later. When everybody goes inside from the protest, they're still talking. They're still communicating. They're still educating. They're still working through persuading people to come to their side. That's still part of it. And so I think that, certainly the civil rights generation had, sort of poo-pooed Twitter activism as, just twittering away, and they didn't realize that people were building a real movement. The second piece of it is, it goes back to my job on the campaign in 2016. Part of why I wasn't going to work in the 2016 cycle. I was columnist for Essence magazine. I'd worked for Obama, and I'd become a writer, and I wasn't going to work in the cycle. I love and respect Hillary Clinton. I would have done everything in my power as a media person to amplify, her policy platforms and positions that I felt would benefit our communities, but I was going to be a part of it as a part of the media. When I was called to join the campaign, it was specifically because I understood Black Twitter. And I understood who the people were, who the players were, what they're about, what their causes are, how they move through the online.
So she understands Black Twitter. That's interesting. Depends on which part of Black Twitter that she's speaking about. Because the Black Twitter that I'm a part of is ADOS. And ADOS is not feeling what Zelina Maxwell is saying. You know what I'm saying? So, and another thing, we will never get rid of Caucasian politics. That's never going to happen. I don't care how far their numbers dwindle. You know what I mean? So, rant that as that may, we gonna be dealing with these Caucasians until they finally go extinct. But we don't know how many years is that gonna be from now, but it's most likely gonna be less than 100 years from now. Probably less than 50 years from now. It depends. But that's the way the trajectory of the universe is going. But in the meantime, what are we going to do as Native Black Americans? And voting is not going to be one of the answers. I can guarantee you that right now. But fighting for reparations for ADOS is. That's what Zelina Maxwell need to be putting more her energy towards. But I'm just saying, let's continue on.
Space, and I had those relationships. And so I was able to add value to that campaign because I understood that. Now imagine, a Democratic Party that doesn't have, every campaign office probably should have a person where this is part of their bucket of responsibilities to understand sort of what's going on within the quote-unquote black Twitter space. No, it's not a place you can go. It is black people who are, activist-minded, thinkers, academics, activists, media folks, entertainers. All of those people are having a conversation. And oftentimes people are excluded from the conversation, right? Like, we're having the conversation among ourselves. Right now, the conversation we had been having for many years about policing and about reimagining how you even consider whether police with guns are a good idea in certain situations, that they now have to show up with guns, like mental health issues and domestic violence. That conversation was happening. Now everybody's a part of it. The conversation has opened up, the protests have come outside, and everybody's like, wow, where were all these people? They were online. That's where they were. They were organizing in their communities, and they were connecting with each other on strategy online, in group chats, in text chats, and I think that what people miss often is that, black people are often having these conversations, because it comes to, it's a matter of our survival. It's not, we're having these conversations as a matter of survival as opposed to intellectual debates around, what policy position, would work best. Like, often it's like, no, we need this to survive. We need the COVID response to be competent in this way and that way because our lives and the lives of the people that we love depend on it. And that, I think, is something the Democratic Party collectively, they sometimes struggle with. And part of that is, identity politics has been demonized as something that is other or different than the politics we've been doing this entire time. And so essentially what I say in the book is that we've been doing identity politics. It was just that white was the only identity that we were deeming important enough to really give full consideration. And now that other people are demanding time and attention and space, we're like, oh, stop playing identity politics. White is an identity. And so we have to reframe the whole conversation. And I think Black Twitter and, hashtag activism has done a lot to educate people around issues of structural racism, issues of systemic inequality and privilege. My favorite new trend is, the Generation Zs, the Parkland kids, that generation. They're educating each other about systemic racism and Black history and white privilege on TikTok. People have stopped doing dances. They're still dancing, but there are a lot more educational videos on there than before, and it's white kids that are educating each other, and I think that's a great new trend that people are going to miss because they're like, they're not on the spaces where the kids are.
It's so important. This book is called The End of White Politics, How to Heal Our Liberal Divide. It's written by the great insider, Zelina Maxwell. Follow her on Twitter, @Zelina Maxwell. And really, it's an analysis of what the Democratic Party needs to do, must do, as white voters become the minority in the U.S. in the next 25 years. Before I let you go, Jolena, we are a few months away. You wouldn't know it, of course, because it's such a stark contrast from 2016 and previous presidential election years, and for good reason. We've got two competing pandemics going on, COVID-19, and as many have talked about, the ongoing pandemic of racism in America, particularly when it comes at the hands of police officers and systemic injustices. But this idea that here we are in an election year, a few months away, and the Democratic Party looking at the next 25 years, they've got a few months really to get it together to actually secure a victory and oust the incumbent, Donald Trump, if they're going to be successful. What do you see as the number one thing that the Democratic Party needs to do, not even in the long term, but right now, in order to win? As we know right now, the demographics reflect a very different America than is being catered to.
Well, I think the Democratic Party got a lot of flack yesterday, the Democrats in Congress anyway, for wearing kente cloth and kneeling. But I think what people miss is that they were kneeling on their way to pass an entire package of legislation.
The whole kneeling part in kente cloth, that's the most stupidest shit I ever seen. Like, for real. Personally, I think they disrespecting and misappropriating African culture. And a matter of fact, there's been tweets upon tweets about that. And ADOS is pissed off. Because they think it's, like I said, they think it's a bunch of foolishness. And I agree with that. And I was saying that all they doing is just misappropriating African culture. But you notice that very few Africans have said anything against them wearing kente clothing as a misappropriation of their African culture. But yet they got all the energy in the world. They got all the energy in the world to attack ADOS for making their reparations claim to the United States government. A government that is really a corporation. You know what I'm saying? Here's just a little bit of what the discussion is in regards to this kente cloth type nonsense and kneeling that they were doing. There's another video where they were kneeling. I don't know if it's in this thread or what have you. But I did say right here that these kente cloth people are misappropriating African culture. But I don't see a whole lot of Africans being outraged at this. And this is besides this African woman, and nobody else really saying anything about this about them kneeling and wearing kente clothing. You know what I mean? Matter of fact, while we're on here, through the ADOS fam say that they approve of her message. And that's what's up. You know what I'm saying? That's the way you show respect and allyship amongst Africans and Native Black Americans. This is what I'm talking about right here. I'll go ahead and play this clip for y'all.
Of unity or solidarity with Black. Hi friends, I'm usually either too busy or too lazy to make this kind of quick video response. But today something happened and I thought it's actually important enough that I get in front of my camera and make a short video to explain something short enough for me to post on Twitter. I was just looking online today like most of you, and what did I see? A bunch of Democrat politicians kneeling down, of which I have nothing to say about that because I am not an American. However, they were all having around their necks this colorful fabric, which I'm sure they put around their necks as some kind of mark or show of unity or solidarity with Black people. So in other words, they are putting forward the kente material or this colorful fabric they had around their necks as some kind of placating sign or symbol to show that they are not racist and they are together with black people. Excuse me, dear Democrats, in your tokenism, you didn't wait to find out that this thing that you're hanging around your neck is not just some African uniform. It's actually the kente material. The kente belongs to the Ghanaian people, mainly the Ashanti tribe. Excuse me, Democrats, don't treat Africans like we're children. These fabrics and these, colorful things that we have within our culture and tradition, they all mean something to us. I know you look at us and you say, oh, Africans, you're so cute in all your colorful dresses. Well, some of those dresses and patterns and colors and fabrics actually do mean something to us. Some of them belong to ancient tribes and mean something to them. So why are you using it as your own show of non-racism or your own show of virtue? Why are you using the kente material to signal your virtue?
Speak.
Stop it. We are not children. Africans are not children. And leave our tradition and our culture to us. And if you don't know much about it, ask somebody. I'm sure there would have been something else you could have done to show your solidarity with black people, instead of taking the kente material and making a little show of it.
Thank you. Thank you, sister. I appreciate that, African sister, for speaking in solidarity with us black Americans. It is disrespectful. But most importantly, they're disrespecting African culture. You know what I'm saying? Real talk. Real talk.
Hi friends, I'm usually either too busy.
But that's what I want to play for y'all. Salute to this African sister. That's why I said that she's an exception. But the rest of them. Yeah, let me see if I can find them kneeling while we're out here. There's a video of them, all of them doing the Kaepernick kneel. I'm like, really? Y'all doing the Kaepernick kneel? Y'all got to be kidding me. Y'all doing way too daggone much. Way too daggone much. Let's see if I can find it. Oh, here it is. This mess right here. This mess right here. Look at this crap.
For those who wish to, we will now kneel for our moment of silence.
And when shit like this, we up here, some of us black Americans, we be wearing this African clothing, man. I ain't trying to be funny, but I think we need to stop wearing African clothing. Because personally, I feel like we're disrespecting African culture by wearing that clothing in the first place, unless you're from Africa. You know what I mean? That's just how I feel about it, because Africans and Native Black Americans are two different people, two different versions of black people. You know what I'm saying? That's just, and that's okay. I have no problem with that. But to say that Africans and Native Black Americans are one and the same, that's bullshit. Because Africans don't live the Native Black American experience. The majority of them are first or second generation Americans. Virtually all of them are first or second generation Americans. So they have not lived through, their ancestors have not lived through American chattel slavery. So, but we do have to acknowledge our differences and respect our differences. You know what I'm saying? And stop trying to say that we're all the same. We're not all the fucking same. All black people are not a fucking monolith. If Caucasians could start seeing that, they will have to approach us, each and every black person, differently, because we're not all the same. That's like saying all Caucasians are the same. That there's different Caucasians out there. You got your German Caucasians, you got your Swedish Caucasians, you got your Norwegian Caucasians. Wherever European nation your family ancestry comes from, that's your identity. And we respect that. You know what I'm saying? That's something to acknowledge and not deny. You know what I mean? So this bullshit here. This bullshit here. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I know. I got you laughing, Amir. I know, right? They're definitely doing too much. This is just ridiculous. Downright ridiculous and straight trifling. Lord have mercy. Africans need to start speaking up on this. More Africans need to start speaking up on this. That's ridiculous. Kaepernick Neal, get the hell out of here. They need to stop. And now all of a sudden the NFL is apologizing for not allowing our people to protest the injustice however they protest the injustice in this country. Which is fake as fuck, but that's a whole nother subject. But anyway, that was just a little bit I wanted to show for continuing on this Laura Coates show. And what's his name? Joaquin Castro is going to be interviewed on Laura Coates' show as well.
To propose, an entire package of legislation of systemic reform. So while they don't have the 60 votes in order to pass, to be clear, in this moment, it's important that they say, we hear you, protesters in the streets, we're going to go do some things legislatively. Because that's, again, why we are all in the street. We're not just in the street to yell and chant and express our anger. Although that's a piece of it, and an important piece of it, but ultimately you want to create change in policy. And so I think with the Democrats, from this moment on, what they need to, focus on is what are they going to do for the people? What are they going to do for people to ensure that they're like, all right, let's go vote, let's go do this, because I know what the plan is going to be to distribute this vaccine to my community to ensure that I can go take my 6-year-old to CVS and they can get that vaccine for free in my community. That's the person that we're voting for is going to be able to do that, going to be able to need to do that, and so we need to keep that in mind. And I think that the error that the Democratic Party makes often is focusing too heavily on not even getting white working class men to vote for them, but not offending white working class people by, moderating their language around issues of race, because they think that people that vote for Donald Trump or who support Donald Trump may think that, they're being too politically correct, or that they're, playing the race cards. Like, no, play the race card. Play it. There are a lot of cards in the deck. Okay? And there are a number of different issues where we just need to lean all the way into them through November, but the other piece of it is a whole other conversation, is ensuring mail-in voting access and being sure that people have a safe way to cast their ballots. So it's number one, encouraging them through messaging, and then being really intentional that you're trying to get black people, that you're not, because they're so intentional about trying to get white voters. and also ensuring that you're making sure those people can vote safely.
So powerful, so poignant, so timely. It's called The End of White Politics, written by Zerlina Maxwell. You can also obviously find her as the co-host of Signal Booth, weekdays 7 to 9 Eastern on Sirius XM Progress Channel 127. Also an MSNBC political analyst, commentator, speaker, and now writer of The End of White Politics. You can get it wherever books are sold. Follow her on Twitter at Zerlina Maxwell. What a powerful and timely piece you've written. I hope that your words are heeded. Thank you, Zerlina.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
We'll be right back after a quick break. Listen to the Laura Coach Show here on Sirius XM Urban View. That was Zerlina Maxwell on her new book, The End of White Politics, How to Heal Our Liberal Divide. We'll be right back.
How to heal our liberal divide. Liberal divide. Well, not everybody in America is liberal though, but okay. Okay.
Texas. He was the HUD secretary under the Obama administration and a candidate for the Democratic nomination in the 2020 presidential race. And if you remember from his platform and his outspoken passion on a number of issues, then you'd recall that he in fact had a people-first policing effort and endeavor, and it addressed things like over-aggressive policing. It called into attention a need for accountability and transparency and for improved police relations. And very early on, he was outspoken on recognizing that the list of names that unfortunately is articulated by so many stands in stark contrast to any sentiment that there is not systemic bias, and instead shows that it's not an anomaly, and there has to be a comprehensive and holistic approach in order to heal the communities and law enforcement's relationships, and to end over-aggressive policing and combat racially discriminatory policing. Well, he joins us now at a very timely moment in history, knowing that in many ways he was prescient and I'm sure uncomfortable by the degree in which he was able to predict the long-standing and growing need for there to be this sort of legislative action. Secretary Julian Castro, how are you? Thank you for joining the program. I appreciate it.
I'm doing well. Good to be with you, Laura. Thanks for having me on.
You know, it's so unfortunate sometimes when people are able to be prescient or predict and based on a knowledge of what has happened in the past and a need for there to be improved accountability. But you have been somebody who very early on and years ago have been vocal about police reform in this country. What for you began this passion? What was it that forced you to want to articulate it in this way as a part of a reform movement?
Well, I just see it as a continuing injustice. And, you hit the nail on the head in terms of looking back at the past. I mean, anybody who has been in this country, for a couple of months, we see video after video after video these days of especially young black men and women being mistreated by police, excessive force being used on them, and on the campaign trail, I would say the names of so many of the people who have been killed at the hands of police unjustifiably. When I did that, it was out of a sense of both urgency that we need to do something about it, and also frustration of kind of leveling with people and saying, and how much of it is it going to take for us to actually make a change. And in 2020, what was so interesting during the campaign is I said the names of many people who had been affected by police violence at my announcement speech in January of 2019. And the reception that I got, especially in states like Iowa and New Hampshire, because I would mention this issue in just about every single stump speech that I gave, the reception that I got was that it wasn't one of the things that people would respond to. You know, a lot of folks there would kind of, they'd be like, oh, okay, like waiting for me to get on to the next thing to talk about. You know, you can understand, you can get a sense when you're in politics, right, and you're on the campaign stump, especially in smaller rooms. You've you're resonating with people because their heads start to nod, right? Or they clap, obviously, that's one way. And so it seemed to be kind of wooden in some places. But then we would go to South Carolina, and I would get nods and looks of understanding and agreement. And I could tell that in this country, at least in my experience out there, you have different levels of understanding of this. And I think for a lot of the Black community, it's a deep understanding and a personal experience and something that many have to contend with every single day, at least the thought in their head. Or if they see a police officer, folks see a police officer coming in the other direction, or they see one in the rearview mirror, or the lights flash in the rearview mirror, and there's a moment of panic where people think, oh, what might happen? So that part was really fascinating to me to see in action in politics. But maybe more importantly, we actually put out a People First Policing Reform Plan that you referred to that said, we're not just going to talk about the problem, this is how we can end it. And I'm proud that we put it out, and even prouder that a lot of what we put out last year is in that legislation, the Justice and Policing Act, and I hope it becomes law.
It'd be curious to see and interesting if you were to go back around, stepping across the country in light of what has happened to George Floyd, and you see the 50-state movement that's happening, if you're going to have it resonate in a different way. And I think for a lot of people, for many, it was not an epiphany, but for others, it was an epiphany of what is now happening and what has been happening and how it's not an anomaly. And you actually, have announced the endorsement of 4 People First policing candidates, by the way, who are all committed to ending police violence and reversing the over-reliance on policing and holding police accountable for misconduct. And you were the first 2020 candidate with a standalone plan to actually end it. And you made police reform a centerpiece of your campaign. And now here we are hearing about, of course, the mechanisms and the way to do so. And one of the things that people are doing, I think in a very reductionist way, is to, rather than talk about a comprehensive plan, Secretary Castro, they are focusing on the phrase defund police. And they are using that in many respects as if it was a comprehensive or even the singular vehicle in which to address police reform. What has been your reaction to not only the phrase defund police, but also about the way in which people are not really recognizing that there is a spectrum of reform that can't be reduced and shorthanded?
Yeah, well, what I focused on is what we can do to change the system that we have in place so that what happened to George Floyd doesn't happen again. And we focus on ending qualified immunity and demilitarizing our police and banning racial profiling, banning stop and frisk, making sure that chokeholds and other dangerous maneuvers are not used, making funding of departments out there contingent on them adopting a national use of force standard that has been shown to cause less loss of life and injury out there. Of course, all of us have heard the phrase and seen the signs that say defund the police or abolish the police, and I haven't met a single person yet, even who has said that, who has actually meant that there would no longer be any kind of law enforcement. And I think if we're being realistic, we know that that's not going to happen. Okay, you're always going to have a need to enforce our laws, and you're going to have circumstances that require at least the potential for a use of force against folks. I think we would all say that ideally would we love to live in a society where we didn't ever need law enforcement anymore. Of course, you would love to live in that society. We don't live in that society. And what I think we can do, though, is we can be smarter and more effective in how we do law enforcement and public safety in this country. For instance, what I do agree with is this summer, cities across the United States, their budgets are in shortfall. They're reeling from COVID-19. I agree with folks that say, look, you should scrutinize the police budget the same way that you scrutinize the public works budget or the parks and recreation budget. Because police department budgets have grown bigger and bigger and bigger, even when crime goes down. I don't think that it should be the case that they only go in one direction. Also, there are smart ways that cities have shrunk the footprint of policing. For instance, if somebody is in a minor collision out on the road, nobody is hurt, but they need a report for insurance purposes. There are more communities that will send out essentially, an administrator out there for insurance purposes to take a record of it and get witness statements instead of sending an officer with a gun. That's unnecessary. So you can shrink the footprint of policing and still keep the public safe.
That's so important to think about ways in which people have to consider, obviously, the need for law enforcement, and that the vision is not that you want to do away with law enforcement, but that you want law enforcement to actually operate in a way that is aligned with the constitutional principles, that the community members feel as though it's effective policing, and really what you've called for is a number of things, including the end of over-aggressive policing and to combat racial discriminatory policing. One of the things you talked about is restricting the use of deadly force unless there is an imminent threat, or adopting technological and organizational approaches like body cameras to support responsible policing practices, or even ending the school to prison pipeline and reform student discipline practices, among many other things, including, the end of qualified immunity or a reevaluation of what that looks like, having law enforcement be required to get written consent for consensual vehicle searches, all the things you've outlined, and it's quite extensive. I encourage you all to look at juliancastro.com/peoplefirstpolicing for more information about it and how a lot of it is enveloped into what recently happened in the House. But what do you see as sort of the political barriers here? Because when you outline these and articulate them, they seem like no-brainers, Secretary Castro. So what has been sort of the Herculean effort been about to actually get this sort of accountability and transparency a reality in practice?
Well, at the local level, for instance, and I started in local government. I was a city councilman in San Antonio and then mayor of the city. Oftentimes, one barrier is police unions. The police unions throw around a lot of weight locally. They contribute a lot to campaigns. They run candidates oftentimes and sometimes get elected. And I also think a lot of times they become completely unreasonable. The listeners may have seen the other day, for instance, what happened in Buffalo after we saw the video of that elderly 75-year-old man get pushed, shoved, and hit the ground and started bleeding out from his head. The two officers that were involved in that were suspended, and 57 of their colleagues resigned in protest of that suspension. They resigned from that unit of the department. And those officers, a couple days later, when I think they showed up at the police building or somewhere there in Buffalo, they were met with a round of applause from those colleagues. The police union in Minneapolis tried to dirty up the name of George Floyd after his death and suggested that perhaps it was justified. I mean, they've just gone off the rails in so many communities. And sometimes that's hard for people in the Democratic Party to hear, because they hear the word union and they think, oh, well, our Democrats supportive of labor. Look, it's quite distinct from the labor movement. These police unions really have gone off the rails. So that's a challenge at the local level. But whether it's the local level or the national level, you need politicians that have the courage, that have the political will, that are willing to pass those ordinances or pass legislation in the state capitol or in the halls of Congress that will actually make a difference. And that's why with People First Future that we just launched a couple of weeks ago. One of our first slates of candidates are People First Policing candidates. Candidates that will go to the mat to put these good policies in place that will actually make a difference in saving lives and make sure that no matter the color of your skin, no matter how much money you have or don't have, who you are in this country, you're going to be treated the same by police.
Julian Castro, thank you for your time, Secretary, for your really eloquent and holistic explanation of why People First Policing is so important. Please go to his website, get all the information you can, because these cannot be reduced to mere bullet points. These are not sound bites. We have to really look at a comprehensive and holistic approach, and recognizing at the state, local, and federal level. And the plan that you laid out a year ago has been enveloped in some ways now, but there's still more work to be done, and we hope to see you continuing to spearhead the effort. We appreciate your time, Secretary Julian Castro. Thank you.
Thank you.
And also, please, if you haven't had a chance to read his book, you definitely should do so. He wrote a memoir in October 2018 that's called An Unlikely Journey, Waking Up from My American Dream. Also, learn more information about his People First Future plan that he laid out in May to help elect bold, progressive candidates whose campaigns are focused on improving the lives of all people they hope to represent. And in fact, 4 of the candidates that have been endorsed under the People First Policing have been Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley, George Gascon, who is a candidate for the LA County DA, Jose Garza, candidate for the Travis County, Texas DA, and Kim Fox, candidate for Cook County, Illinois State Attorney. Learn more information as well at his website at Julian for the Future, or JulianCastro.com. We'll be right back.
The PGA Tour returns Thursday with the Charles Schwab Challenge. Catch all the action with over 20 hours of...
Yep. As you may see, excuse me. Yep, as you may see, now see what the defund the police really means. It doesn't mean abolish the police. Joe Biden is the representation of the old status quo, of the status quo in general, which is nothing other than spoiled milk. You know, so yeah, you're absolutely right. Absolutely right about that. That's right. Yeah. The Castros couldn't be trusted anyway, whether it be Julian or Joaquin or whoever other brother is in politics. So, yeah. But see, rather than being focused on being tough on crime, modern day police should be more compassionate towards the people they police. For real, as ADOS, we should have our own police department. You should have only ADOS people policing ADOS. You know what I'm saying? And that would make things a whole lot easier. But, dealing with folks of the European American persuasion, you know what I'm saying, that may not be possible. I mean, look how much they infiltrated the Black Lives Matter movement. You know what I mean? So, yeah. See, the Trump campaign, they would never endorse defunding the police. They say it makes the police less tough on crime. When being tough on crime has led to people being certain group of people being heavily mass incarcerated and or being shot at and murdered. So once we understand that, everything else would make more sense. These Democrats and Republicans. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Without a doubt. And once we understand this demonic political system as it is, we could govern ourselves more accordingly. We could call both the Democrats and the Republicans on their bullshit. We could call the Caucasian liberals and the Caucasian conservatives on their bullshit as well. You know what I'm saying? So there's no rug that anybody can sweep me and the rest of us who know what's going on under any political spectrum, because we don't fit any political spectrum. Our political spectrum is based on justice, restorative justice for ADOS people. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So that's the deal with that. So what Joe Biden says really doesn't make any sense. Yeah, he feels that there should be police reform, but he's against defunding the police. You see what I'm saying? That doesn't even go together. You know what I mean? So it really doesn't go together. It's like Joe Biden really doesn't understand, or doesn't want to understand, how people have been negatively affected by over policing. You know what I'm saying? So he doesn't understand. Neither does he want to understand, because he doesn't live the lifestyle that we live every single day. You know what I'm saying? He lives in a completely different class, completely different avenue and platform than the rest of us. So why should we expect him to understand? You know? Same goes for any state governor, same goes for any politician, regardless of whether it's local, state, and federal. You know? So, yeah. So the only city that is actually defunded, there's only two cities. One of them is Camden, New Jersey. And actually their crime has been cut down by more than half. But yet you don't hear anything about Camden, New Jersey. So, but yeah, this tweet is from this sister right here. Salute to this sister. You know. But yeah, that's basically what defunding the police really means. I know, right? I know, right? Yeah. This person's here, like token, I believe the police should be limited to 12 sheriffs per county. Distinguish only be a feather in their caps. I don't even understand the rest of what he's saying. Hobbitry and arms. So that's what's up. Yeah, you're right about that. You're right about that. I'm gonna pray to
Play on Sirius XM HD4 Radio.
less than 250,000.
54. Call 800-231-9060.
Look at what the priorities are, what the role of policing should be, whether to have an adversary, a huge barrier and hurdle in order to accomplish an objective. What's the messaging that acts as a counterproductive measure to promote that which we already want to have happen? What's the messaging? It's all important for us to consider each of these aspects. I gotta go to a quick break here in Laura Coach. We're gonna come right back to you in your calls at 866-801-8255. Also joined by actress and activist passionate about so many of these issues, Anne Marie Johnson. We'll be right back. Sometimes, y'all, we just have to keep our faith. It is Honor and Howard Rowland, as well as in Living Color, Melrose Place, Girlfriends, Jag, to her most recent co-starring role in Ava DuVernay's anthology drama Cherish the Day for OWN and the final season of How to Get Away with Murder. In fact, her list and resume is so extensive. Take the whole show to talk about all that she's done, but I love especially that she is active on the other side of the camera and beyond the camera. She's a passionate activist. She's a national board member and four-term VP of SAG, the first African-American to be elected to that position in the entire union's history, as well as as a national chair of the Ethnic Employment Opportunity Committee and member of SAG's Affirmative Action Diversity Task Force, where she helped create and implement programs for the union and the industry at large in the area of affirmative action and diversity. In 2016, she was honored with the esteemed Ralph Morgan Award for her service to the union and was named by Congressman Adam Schiff as Woman of the Year in 2017 and received the SCLC's Rosa Parks Award, among numerous other honors. She also serves as the VP of the nonprofit, the Mankind Project, Inc. She joins us now to talk about, her unique perspective right now as the daughter of an LAPD sergeant and affirmative action activist, and what she's seeing now, particularly what the role of people who are in Hollywood can be to tell these stories, to ensure that they're not an anomaly, and what she wants young people to do with these protests right now. Welcome back to the show, Anne Marie Johnson. How are you?
It's always, even under the toughest circumstances, it's always great to be with you. So, good morning from Southern California.
I'm glad that you're on, and of course from California all the way to New York and every state in between, including my hometown of Minnesota, we are all seeing what is happening in reaction to not only the specific killing of George Floyd, but the symbolism of what Nancy Pelosi called his martyrdom yesterday morning. What has been your reaction to what you're seeing?
Well, it goes without saying, the immediate reaction of seeing yet another person of color executed was jarring to the system, to my psyche, to my soul, to my faith. But unfortunately, we've seen this rodeo before. What makes this different? First, I want to say there are many levels to this and many actions that we can take. I think beyond the demonstration and the protest, what we need to do is ensure that every person who's risked their lives to protest and demonstrate must vote. Because the heart of the matter and the most immediate action we can take is to make sure that we clean out the White House from soup to nuts, from the president to the nuts that he's appointed. We have to clear it out, because if that doesn't change, then nothing we are going to try to achieve will really take place, because of the toxic atmosphere that this individual has caused globally. And we're experiencing so many things that this world has never experienced before happening simultaneously. The filth and disgust of the White House, the pandemic, and once again, the execution of a person of color. So we've got a lot on our plate. And we just have to, a lot of things, it's going to take a long time for some of these things to happen, but we have to have a plan. And the first thing on our schedule is to remove the toxicity in the White House.
You know, I'm glad that you bring it back to voting, because I think that so oftentimes, I was talking to our earlier guest, Angelina Maxwell, about her new book, and the idea of the sort of hashtag activism. And I think a lot of people, and I don't want to be dismissive of hashtag activism, there is an absolute role for it, but it has to be combined with other things. You cannot simply engage in a hashtag activism and then forget to show up at the polls. One of the reasons that people like Michelle Obama have been so passionate about trying to ensure that people can speak not only online or through social media, but with their votes as well. And you pointed out, of course, one person in particular, the President of the United States, but we also know, Anne Marie Johnson, that it is, there's a whole cast of characters involved and a long legacy that has led for this moment in history of this systemic bias becoming sort of the, for lack of a better phrase, the straw that breaks the camel's back. Why do you think there has been a disconnect for so many people realizing the power of their vote and only being reactive in many respects when it takes something like this?
Well, I think social media has a lot to do with it. No offense to the overwhelming outpouring of support with regard to this particular situation, but here in Southern California, specifically Los Angeles, while I was, viewing as much as I possibly could in the safety of my home, because I am taking this pandemic very seriously, I saw a lot of hashtag Instagram moments, and it broke my heart to see that many of these people, regardless of their age, were there purely for the moment, the FOMO situation. And I'm very anxious with the fear that they may not show up in November. And I've been disappointed before, and I'm praying to God that our world is not disappointed again. But I'm really, really quite fearful that they may not show up in November. And the future of this country, the health of this country, is in their hands. And even though we have social media and you can find everything at your fingertips, I find population now more functionally illiterate than it was prior to social media, and that's concerning.
You know, I hope that you're wrong and that people are not simply in the moment and that this will extend beyond, but we also do know that past is prologue, and we know the attention span across generations is distinct. And we also know that people oftentimes, unless it's in front of them, and mind you, we know Eric Garner couldn't breathe almost 5 years ago. And the idea that we're seeing it again, and we're seeing examples of it in, I believe, Texas is one place as well. We're hearing about this now in other places across the country. We're seeing, as Will Smith has said, that racism hasn't gotten worse, it's getting filmed. And the idea that we know that this is not an anomaly, I hope that people are not simply exploiting the moment, but are looking at it and saying, this is not opportunity for change, and I want to see this up and down the ballot of how we can be responsive to prevent ever going through this again. And, you know, it's so important.
Through it again.
Right.
The beating of Rodney King was recorded in real time, and Los Angeles was on fire, and that was wall-to-wall coverage. How many situations like this do we need to compel us to actually do something? And you mentioned something about messaging and hashtagging.
Mm-hmm.
We are falling into a trap because we have now fed the Trump machine a motto that will wake up, that is more than a dog whistle for his base, and that is defunding the police department. And that word defunding or the word dismantling or the word disbanding is very, very dangerous. And rightly so, he has attached himself to that, and it's going to be a very useful message for him. So those of us who are fighting the good fight, we need to rebrand what we're actually talking about before it's too late. I'm very encouraged that Representative Karen Bass was more articulate on the issue. I'm really pleased that Vice President Biden took it to task and is trying to rebrand that comment. But it's dangerous. It's already out there. The bell is rung and you can't unring it. And I'm really concerned about that.
You know, I think a lot of people share your idea and notion of that, and I've been talking about in the show for some time now about how important messaging is and what is it you're articulating. And of course, oftentimes people are conflating different things. You know, you see one sign that says abolish police, next one that says defund police, and you have the impression, some people who would like to have the impression or just have not had enough information to conflate the two as one in the same, and one sounds like it's begging for an explanation. But you know, you're in a unique role, as you have been for many years, as somebody who can talk about this not only as the daughter of a former police officer and affirmative action activist, but also somebody who knows the power of storytelling and the power of the narrative, particularly when there's platforms that can be used to get the messaging out. You know, what is there a role? We talked about what corporate America can do, about what Capitol Hill can do. Is there a role for Hollywood in all this, or is that down the road?
I think it's down the road. I think Hollywood needs to be quiet for a moment. I think Hollywood needs to let society direct where Hollywood is going to go. Hollywood has made so many missteps, so many errors. The whitewashing of the minority experience, you know, the fact that people are renting or screening The Help or 42 or, you know, these whitewashing type movies to learn about life as an African American, you know, that's my concern. I think Hollywood just needs to take a pass and let I don't want to say real people because I'm a real person who happens to be in the industry, but I think Hollywood needs to just sit back, take a pass, and let other people drive the conversation. Hollywood needs to stay out of it.
You know, it's fascinating you say that.
Wrong. Hollywood has gotten it wrong. Except for Ava DuVernay and other filmmakers and creators, Hollywood has gotten it wrong on so many levels. Hollywood is, and I'm using Hollywood as the global term for the entertainment industry, has promulgated and perpetuated the negative images of people of color. And then they tried to fix it. And then, Hollywood has made so many missteps, I'm embarrassed.
You know, it's fascinating to hear you in particular talk about this. Of course,
let me start. Hollywood works with with federal government agencies anyway, especially with the CIA. I mean, duh. I mean, does Anne-Marie Johnson not know that? But, you know, she ain't gonna say that because she's in the industry any daggone way. You know what I mean? Hey, it is what it is, man. Exactly. I agree. Yup, it's definitely quite refreshing as everything closed down. Yeah. Yeah. And they making money. They have been making money off of our oppression for years. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I mean, come on. Come on, Anne-Marie. You got to get aboard. You really need to do research, really do some in-depth research on the industry that you're working for, because a lot of the people in your industry are either straight reptilians or straight devils, yo, straight demons in the industry, yo. Even your own fellow celebrities, there are some who are straight demons. You know what I mean? And worship Baphomet, either worship Lucifer or Baphomet. Most of them probably worship Baphomet because a lot of them are transgender And Baphomet is a transgender god. Anyway, I'm done speaking.
I shouldn't be surprised, given your advocacy and your activism, and as part of the Affirmative Action Diversity Task Force, and as a national chair of the Ethnic Employment Opportunity Committee, and you know full well the history of Hollywood and what has happened and why it's so important to have people in front and behind the camera as decision makers, because of sort of the stereotypes and motifs that are at play that contribute to it. Do you feel like there is support in that position, that Hollywood really would take a step back, or do you think there are many who would say, oh, no, this is even more of an opportunity to make sure, instead of taking a step back, to really get it right this time?
Well, is it an opportunity or is it opportunistic? So, people make their lives creating images, and sometimes the monetary aspect of creating an image takes first position to the truth. So, which is a history of Hollywood. We are the land of make-believe. So it's a very tenuous relationship between the truth and entertainment. And I certainly, and I'm in the midst of it, this is what I do for a living, but I certainly would not rely on Hollywood in telling the truth about what is really going on. Yes, it would be great if we had more people of color making the decisions on what type of content gets delivered to the masses. But it really, at some point, listen, I know at some point it really doesn't matter what your gender or race is. We have police officers of color who go against their promise to protect and serve. So at some point, it's almost irrelevant what color you are. It's what agenda are you following? What pays your bills? What helps you survive? I think this problem we've had for 400 plus years, it's going to take so many years of honest conversation. Listen, we as African Americans have to have an honest conversation. We have to sit down and have an honest conversation. White people have to have an honest conversation amongst themselves. For the past 14 days, I've been the advice giver to all of my white friends. It's exhausting. It is. We are back to being the wet nurses of this country, and it's exhausting for black people. I mean, aren't you tired? I'm exhausted trying to explain things to some of my white friends. I'm worn out.
You know, just the imagery and the idea of the exhaustion and what you're articulating is so incredibly thought-provoking and poignant for everyone to hear from Anne-Marie Johnson, actress and actress. Hope you're following her on Twitter, by the way. It's AMJ Loves LA. AMJ Loves LA is her Twitter handle as well. You know, I have to ask you, you are the daughter of an LAPD sergeant and affirmative action activist. Do you, and he passed away unfortunately in 1987 after a long storied career. Tell me, when you look at the relationship between African Americans in this country, and particularly you in particular, with the police force, do you have a unique perspective that is different from what people are articulating, or do you share the same concerns as do members of the police, who also, some of them share the same concerns about ineffective and discriminatory policing? Well, I'm still very involved with the Los Angeles Police Department. I volunteer in certain aspects of recruitment for the LAPD, and I've created a series of public service announcements. So I'm still involved, even though my father has passed on. We know that police departments are populated by humans, and humans are flawed. There's a great frustration amongst police officers whose desire it is to do the right thing at all times. The majority of police officers want to do the right thing at all times. It's very frustrating to hear the blanketed indictment of all enforcement.
officers, because it's not true. And I don't know what it's going to take. I think it's going to take more community policing, less, not defunding, but maybe the reallocation of funds. But listen, we've asked our police officers to be our brothers, our mothers, our sisters, our fathers, our teachers, our therapists, our homeless specialists, and this is not the job they signed up to do. And it's the failure, and I can only talk about Los Angeles, it's the failure of Los Angeles, because our homeless situation is an epidemic, and it's a failure of our city council, and it's a failure of our mayor, that we've now dumped this horrible problem of mental illness and homelessness on a ill-equipped police department. It should not be their responsibility. So I think what we need to do is rethink what we allocate, not defund, not dismantle, but rethink it and make it better. That's the frustration that I'm hearing amongst my friends who wear the uniform and who risk their lives 24/7 for my safety. So my goal is not only...
Well, not all of them are real cops, so... So whatever cops you talking to, they might be real, but not every cop in America is a real cop. You know, there's a lot of imposters out here. And that's the truth that we really need to get to. You know what I'm saying? I'm sick of seeing all these goddamn imposters, and they get more news coverage than the real fucking cops. You know what I'm saying? George Floyd, a fake motherfucker, he gets more press coverage than fucking Breonna Taylor. And all these other people who've been shot and killed by the motherfucking police. You know what I'm saying? That's the shit that burns me. You know what I mean? Y'all got 3 motherfucking memorials for one fucking dead man who's not even a fucking celebrity. But yeah, we don't get it. We're lucky to get at least one memorial for fucking Breonna Taylor and all these other people who've been shot and killed by the motherfucking police. That's the shit that trips me the fuck out. You know what I mean? That's the shit that trips me the fuck out. So I'm like, hey, we need to shift out motherfucking outrage and all this fake shit that is fucking going on. You know what I mean? And start exposing this fake shit for the fuck it is. You know, that's why I do these YouTube videos. Expose this motherfucking fake shit. There are other truthers on YouTube who doing videos. You know, exposing this fake shit. The Real Yvonne, Geometry Effect News, and others, Forever Awake, and other YouTubers that are spitting this truth out. You know what I'm saying? That's the shit that trips me out. You know what I mean? Like, for real. Yeah, I'm sick of all this fake shit. Like, for real, I'm sick of all this fake shit. And everybody falling for the fake shit. You know what I mean? Because all you're doing is making black Americans' conditions much worse than they already are. And that has been for the past 400 plus goddamn years. But yet, I'm supposed to so-called shut up and dribble like that bitch-ass motherfucking Lauren Ingram says? Motherfucker, please. Hell nah, fuck that. I ain't gonna shut my mouth any motherfucking longer. I'll do this shit to the day I fucking die, my nigga. For real. And that goes to Lauren Ingram and all these other motherfuckers. Yup. That's my rant for today. Word up. Shit.
Making the relationship between the Los Angeles Police Department and those who feel that they're not justly served by the police department better. My goal is also to make the police department feel more comfortable policing our communities. So it's a difficult task.
Yeah. I know, right? See, The only way people gonna be comfortable policing is if they comfortable in policing communities of people that look like them. I don't think that's racist. You know what I'm saying? I think that's one of the smartest moves that any police department can make. It's have the ADOS police officers policing ADOS people. You know what I'm saying? And having Caucasian officers policing Caucasian people. It's just that simple. And if you have any immigrant officers, have them policing mainly immigrant people. It's just that simple. It's just that simple. You know what I mean? It's just that daggone simple. But you know, you can't tell these so-called authorities of thought anything because they think they know it all. When in truth, they don't know shit. Well, they do know what's going on, but they just not going to do what needs to be done. Let's just put it that way. But the idea is to keep us traumatized as long as possible. So we won't do anything. So we won't be able to think for ourselves. So we won't be able to function as fucking humans. You know? That's what this shit is really all about. Yeah, I know I'm trying to get to the end of this thing, but it's just like, yo, that shit, I mean, there's just certain stuff that just like really burns me that I had to let out of my system, you know? Because these shows that we listen to and all of this, and I'm giving commentary and challenging their assertions, you know what I mean? These people, they may not like it. Laura Coates probably not going to like it, but hey, she'll be alright. You know what I'm saying? She'll be alright. Same goes for Roland Martin and the rest of these blue check Negroes. Yeah, they got a lot. They got a lot of these shows on Sirius XM. I may have to play some more of these shows more often and give my commentary. Yup. Let me go ahead and finish playing the rest of this broadcast. This segment of the Laura Coates Show.
I'm very optimistic. I believe we can achieve this task if the right people live outside of themselves and risk, trying to make it work. But what we have to do immediately is to change the administration from A to Z and start anew and try to fix what has been so horribly broken by Trump and his supporters.
Anne-Marie Johnson, it's always a pleasure to hear your insight. Your views are unique and thought-provoking. I appreciate your time as always. Please follow her on Twitter at AmJLovesLA. And what she speaks to is, of course, the greatest truth of having to look at things in a comprehensive and holistic way. And that we cannot replace sound, contemplative, legislative, judicial, and of course executive action with a slogan. We have to be able to approach it in a holistic way. Everyone needs to be heard. There needs to be an investment and interest for what will be mutually beneficial to us all. I appreciate your time, and also my guests, Julian Castro as well as Elena Maxwell. Thank you for listening to the Laura Coates Show here today on Sirius XM Urban View. Have a great day. I'll be covering the funeral of Mr. George Floyd for CNN beginning at noon Eastern. Please tune in. Have a great day, everyone. Hey, this is Karen Hunter, and at Urban View, we have a family of tough people.
We are about making change.
Who are willing to not just work, but they have a vision.
We demand that the people take action. Use their power to make change. That's what really Urban View and the Madison Show is all about.
We invite you and we challenge you to create the world you want to live in.
It's not your typical talk channel.
Urban View, Sirius XM 126. Hey, I'm Rick.
Yep. That's all I want to do on this live. But I definitely am going to be doing another live. I probably might do one pretty soon. Probably maybe at the latest within the next half hour or so. Because I really want to I really want to find out what the rest of these guys are saying about police reform. Such as either Smirkanish or Joe Madison. I haven't decided which one yet. It's going to be one of them two. So, yeah. So other than that, you know what I'm saying? Y'all be easy. And I definitely see y'all in the next video. Peace.